Hey everybody, my name's Kils. You're in the Kill Zone, Toronto, Canada. I've always been into music, and I've always been, I was a guitar player in high school, and I was in bands, and one of the real inspirations for me starting was I got a 4-track, and I was messing around with, layering tracks and production, really, at sort of in an old school way. And when I moved to Halifax, and I always tell the story about I moved in next door to my now best friend and collaborator, Uncle Fester, who really introduced me to hip-hop. And it's funny because that inspiration for the production, stuff I was doing with 4-track, just layering guitar parts and stuff, when Fester and I were exploring, we kind of came up together in production and making beats. And it was an easy transition. I mean, from the 4-track to beat creation, it's sort of the same mind in a certain sense. And I found the production aspect of it really, really inspiring, and it's the main reason why I think I've become an engineer and producer. And an engineer primarily, I should say. And at that time in Halifax, there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of stuff going on. Like Buck 65 was coming up, 6'2", Sebitones. Scratch Bastard was just beginning his rise. Guys like Josh Martinez was a close friend back in the day that really put us on production wise. 6'2" being part of the Anticon in Buck 65, the whole Anticon movement. There were so many talented people there, and there was a real scene. And on top of the sort of technical production stuff I was getting stoked about and getting involved in, the scene was just really. You really had a sense that there was something special going on in Halifax at the time. I had this one friend who was always up on new shit. You have that one friend that was always like, "Yo, here, listen," like playing you stuff to listen to. And he, he was the first guy to play me Metallica. He was the first guy to play me 9 Inch Nails. He was the first guy to play me Rage Against the Machine, which, again, too, like being a rock head growing up in high school, that was a transitional moment, like loving Rage Against the Machine, which is essentially a rap group. I mean, they're not a heavy metal group, they're a rap group. And so that was a big transition. So I had memories of like listening to Rage Against the Machine and being like, wow, like this format is amazing, being really struck by the power. And it's funny too, because again, like I wasn't into rap, but the raw energy of Rage Against the Machine kind of just enveloped you, like there was no way to really deny it, Josh Martinez played me a record by the Juggernauts called Clear Blue Skies. And that record, when I heard that record, that really was a trend. Like, I'll never forget, because we were in his basement, dingy basement, and he was showing us tracks off his 4-track for his album, and he just gotten it on vinyl, and he played it for me, and I just remember being like, first of all, I nearly cried. Like, I was like, the format of it, like the power of the medium of hip-hop kind of took me again. I'm blessed with parents that are just incredibly supportive, and they always want you to get good grades. Any parent's going to want you to get good grades. But my parents were equally concerned about me finding something, because I think they understood that no matter, people say this, like, find your passion, right? And the whole reason why finding your passion is important is because the most important thing isn't talent. As much as anyone will tell you that, like, you either have it or you don't have it. That's true. People either have talent or they don't. There's God-given talents that people are granted with. But the most important thing out of anything that you'll ever learn or do is your work ethic. And work ethic is impossible if it's not something that you love doing. You know what I mean? So for me, and my parents understood at a certain time that it was really about finding your passion. It wasn't so much about, doing what you love. I mean, it is that, but the most important thing about finding your passion is it will feed your work ethic, and you will self-start. And that's not something that you can learn. My dad was a piano player when he was younger, and he played in clubs. He played some jazz stuff, and he had his Royal Conservatory and everything else. But he didn't go down that route. His parents wouldn't have wanted him to go down that route at all, and he went a different route. But I think in a certain way, my folks and my dad especially live vicariously a little bit through some of my accomplishments. Like, it's funny because like my parents don't really get the music in the same sense. It's not their music, but I think they live vicariously through some of the successes and things that I've been able to do. I mean, my dad will drive to Montreal and come see a show. You can find inspiration anywhere. I mean, you could be listening to Ethiopian glottal stop music. You can be listening to Swedish pop. There's really no limit to the influences that you can get. So in a sense, staying inspired is a little bit easier because you can kind of like I can be listening, like yesterday in the car, I was listening to 80s music, like getting inspired by Joy Division. The other way that remaining inspired is important is to keep changing your interface, keep changing your style of production and different tools and instruments, right? An MPC has a certain sound to it. There are certain things about it that avenues that you'll be sort of ushered towards when you use that type of gear. And I find that if you switch gear and keep trying to change what you do, obviously you want to master your craft, your instrument. But I find that that's a really inspiring way to move forward, is to always try to change your approach a little bit. For example, when I experiment with chopping samples, I recently found a really cool way of taking 6/8 timed samples and flipping them into 4. And as soon as I did that, literally my entire sample library collection became new again, because I found this new approach. So it's all about finding new approaches, because that'll inspire you to do things that you weren't doing before, and again, trying to enter that randomness into it so that it's an exploration. It's not just like, you're not just pumping things out. You're still exploring and learning. Being a professional, I think that's the toughest thing, because being a professional means that you have to sacrifice your own interest for the betterment of the project. And you have to understand that at certain points, whether you made the beat or mixed it or not, it's more important that that song or that project be as good as it possibly can be, because its victories will be and can be our victories or your victories. But you have to be willing to sacrifice. You have to be willing to go into war ready to die. And, I've had a lot of friendships tested by this problem of, we've had members of our crew that aren't pulling their weight. That was one of the hardest things for me to understand and get over. Was it doesn't matter if I'm working as hard as I possibly can. If there's no W, then there's nothing for us to build on, and therefore your position is what it is. You have to be willing to be a professional to the point of results are the only thing that matter at the end of the day. The record good? Were you part of this thing being the best that it possibly could, or did you steal yourself a bit so that you could be part of something, to get on? You have to be willing to take yourself out of the equation and take a step and say, you know what? I'm gonna sacrifice my own contributions to this thing, because this thing needs to be the best thing that it can be, and maybe I'm not ready for that, or maybe the project doesn't need me, maybe the project needs something else, I'd like the legacy to be, that people had fun and had a good time listening to my stuff, and that I definitely brought something to the controllerism scene with the MPC stuff. You would like your legacy to be those songs, and like in the same way that like, you have a memory of driving to the cottage with your girlfriend and you guys listen to the Bob Dylan album back to front, and so like your music evokes a memory, I would love that to be the case. I would love it that my legacy would be that people remember songs that I've produced with memories that are important to them, and that's how the legacy lives on for them.